Hey there, this is Timmy Britt from Timmy Britt Studios, and you're listening to Skull Rock Podcast. Let's do this.
Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Aye, mateys, remember this as the day you sailed with the Skull Rock Podcast. Proceed at your own risk and mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tale.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Each week we take you into behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's playing in theaters, and what's going on in this universe, this epic universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culture critic. And you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, Disney historian, and author. Welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on the Skull Rock YouTube channel. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Aljon, welcome back. You were our secret guest down at Walt Disney World, and you've gathered all the intel to tell our listeners. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for asking. Good to be back here at the co-pilot chair with you. And man, you know, the kids loved it, and I loved it too. We had a good time at Walt Disney World, so...
Let me ask you, Aljon, were the parks crowded?
Oh, yeah. I don't know why some people are saying the parks aren't crowded. We were just there during the weekday, and it was packed. It was hot and sweltering and rainy. But I can tell you, we definitely got a lot out of the trip. The kids loved it. They loved Animal Kingdom the most. As you would expect, but they loved it.
It's a great park.
We enjoyed the heck out of it. I know we have a lot of memories. You go back in the show archives to hear Dave talk about that. But yeah, we loved it, and it was great to see the changes they've made to Epcot. We haven't been back to the parks in a couple years. You know, we used to be annual pass holders, and we are again. But we used to be bi-coastal annual pass holders pre-pandemic. And since getting the kids during the pandemic and adopting our kids out, we just haven't been. We've been to the parks once 2 years ago, and we've been on several cruises, and then now we're back. And all the changes to the park and the attractions are wonderful, and we just had a great time. And the cast members were great as well. We missed them. So,
well, listen, I appreciated you texting me when you were over at the Destino property.
So, yeah, we were.
Tell our listeners about that.
Well, we were there. Kristen, back before we had the kids, pre-kids, we were invited to so many press things, and we went to Destino Tower. Kristen was invited as one of our, the content creators to do the launch of Destino Tower over there, Coronado Springs. What a beautiful place. And we had a date night there, so we got a babysitter, expensive as hell, but awesome. But we had a babysitter, and we went to Destino Tower. We went to have dinner and drinks, and we were talking, and then all of a sudden, of course, Destino Tower, based on the work of Salvador Dali, and of course, Dave, you were heavily involved in what was it, a co-producing role there, right? For that film.
It was we completed the film that Walt Disney and Salvador Dali and John Hench and a few other folks had started working on in 1946.
Yeah.
We finished it. It got nominated for an Academy Award. Right. And then ultimately I wound up writing the book on the whole project.
That's right. And lo and behold, we're sitting there having drinks, amazing drinks, and talking to a 25-year cast member, veteran there. There's just like, was there from the very beginning and was like, was there just throughout the entire, it was like Michael Eisner's favorite bartender, apparently. And then we also talked to some Imagineers that were there as well that now work at Epic Universe, and we're talking, and we just had a great time. And the TVs were on, and all of a sudden, here goes Dave Bossert's name popping up, and it's like, oh, they have Destino on loop here. And then the film started all over again from the beginning. And of course, I texted Dave.
That's awesome.
So there are two monitors there. Of course, the whole place has got this, this theming of everything,
it's all themed on Destino.
On Destino. Yeah. And so there's a whole wall of just pictures that were highlighted and featured heavily in your book, Dave. So I took a picture of the wall, took a picture of the monitor showing the film, and texted you, Dave. And it's like, we're here at Destino Tower, and guess what? They're showing Destino, and they have a whole wall with the photos from your book, which are amazing. So once again, you walk through, there's a Destino everywhere. And of course, everything from that film, from the 1940s film that you completed, you and your team were able to complete, was just absolutely amazing. Of course, I love the film anyway, but it's really cool. And the bartender was like, oh, you know someone that worked on this film? I said, yes, I do, in fact. And the Imagineers, of course, had perked up and was like, oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, we didn't. I don't know these people, but, they didn't know. It was just a whole other generation of Imagineers, younger Imagineers. Yeah. But it was very cool. And then, of course, the bartender was talking about Michael Eisner and how Michael Eisner used to come in and would always ask her opinion on things like that. And she was just like, I'm just your bartender. I'm just happy to be here, But it was very, very cool how he seemed to be a very kind person to her. And so we got a little bit of some Eisner intel, which was kind of neat. But
very nice.
Yeah. But it was really good.
He wasn't
Dave.
a terrible person. He was a nice guy.
Yeah, I just heard really good things about, that situation. It was just one of those things where, she was there at Pleasure Island from the very beginning and from when it launched, and then throughout her entire career, she just worked as one of the top tier bartenders, and she just happened to be working there that night.
Yeah, let me ask you something. The Pleasure Island is no longer there. What did they replace it with?
It's just Disney Springs. So it's
just
a
all
big
part
shopping.
of Disney Springs, right?
Yeah,
it's not.
They completely facelifted that whole area. They went from from Pleasure Island to downtown Disney, now to Disney Springs, and it's just a nice kind of open air, converted water station is kind of their story, Imagineering story, and it looks really nice. I enjoy it.
Yeah, and the one thing I miss is the Adventurers Club.
Yeah, no longer there, of course. Yeah. But, a lot of people have fond memories, of course, about Adventurers Club. And we were there several times during that era of Pleasure Island when they were still around. And, that whole kind of entertainment complex and different places and stuff was a really great and novel idea at the time. It's just difficult to get people, with this themed entertainments, people's taste change, unfortunately. It would have been nice to keep it, but you never know. These kind of things don't ever die. They just maybe are cyclical, and maybe will come back in a different way down the road. So, but we had a blast, Dave.
I'm glad. It sounds like you had a great time, and we're back in the saddle here. Yes. We're going to be dropping part 3 of our interview with animation and live action director Kevin Lima.
Yeah,
and we've been getting a lot of notes from folks about that. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but because this is our first show for July,
yes,
we have a special segment that's going to run just during July in celebration of Disneyland's 70th anniversary. We have Poet Laureate, the Skull Rock Poet Laureate, Matt Mason, reading a selection of poems from his wonderful book of poetry about Disneyland called At the Corner of Fantasy and Maine, Disneyland, Midlife, and Churros. So let's have Matt read the poem for this week, and then when we come back, we'll get to our mailbag.
Sounds good.
He's a poet.
I just never took you for a poet before.
The poet?
Just so you know, since you're new here, I'm a poet, a street poet.
Celebrate Disneyland's 70th anniversary with Skull Rock Podcast's Poet Laureate Matt Mason.
All right, it's an honor. These poems go through a lot of Disneyland history, so it's fun to read these for the 70th. This poem, in fact, is called Disneyland 1973. Is so big, so much to see, so crowded, so you, so small, so 4 years old, see mainly people's butts. But so what? You are wearing Mickey ears with your name cursived on by a sewing machine's golden thread. You are king of this castle, poking in and out of view between pants. You rode a submarine, monorail, teacup, elephant. My God, cotton candy, Coca-Cola, popcorn. Your stomach feels full of fireworks. Please, you can't leave. But, oh man, just a minute, just a sec to lie down.
That was wonderful, Matt. And you can read all about Matt's experiences and his poems from Disneyland, about Disneyland, in At the Corner of Fantasy and Maine, Disneyland, Midlife, and Churros by Matt Mason, and it's published by the Old Mill Press.
The fantastic Old Mill Press.
Yes, and you can go to theoldmillpress.com and get a signed copy of Matt's book of Disneyland poetry whenever you want. Thank you, Matt.
Hey, my pleasure.
Always great to hear a wonderful poem from Matt Mason, our poet laureate. I love it.
Absolutely. Now I think we got to get to our mailbag.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast answers your email.
All right, Dave, what's up this week?
Well, we got an email this week from one of our listeners in Salem, Massachusetts, and I'm going to butcher his name. Okay, it's Palavios, I think. Palavios. I'm trying to pronounce it correctly. Palavios.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe you could do a better job than me.
No, that's good. Palavios.
Okay, great. So he says, Dear Aljon and Dave, I'm here with you guys, knowing that I could but would reach out to you two because of two reasons. I mean, three reasons. First of all, I'm a little bit too bothered by the recent podcast stutters during today at the time of the email. Now, Aljon, you and I both know once in a while there's always some issue with our podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's referring to, I think, 2 weeks ago when we dropped the first part of Kevin Lima's initially the upload, there was a bit of a stutter and there were words dropping out, but you fixed that very quickly and re-uploaded it. So I just want him to, I want Polyvios to know that the episode has been fixed, and most people actually listen to the second upload of it.
Yes.
So which is going fine. He goes on to say, second of all, Eric, is Eric still working at Disney Animation Studios, but is his drawing talent still appreciated, even though he and some others, I hate to say, are marginalized, but still need most respect as our own parents? So anyway, To answer your question, he's referring to Eric Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, Eric is still with Disney Animation Studios. Is he still appreciated? I think he is. I know certainly in the industry he's very well appreciated, but I think, with the transition that happened at Disney Animation from 2D to CG, I do think some of the 2D artists that hung on for a while were marginalized. Not appreciated for what they have to offer, which is unfortunate, and we've talked about that in the past. And he says, and third is that there's still more hope for the national, therefore global animation industry, and that is still some petitioning going on to still keep the work re-centralized in old LA. But here are a bunch of the greatest online drawing tools that have been going on for more than 10 years, like the Line of Action, lineofaction.com. Well, here's the thing. To that point, we talked about this on the show, Aljon. Mm-hmm. Animation, has been decentralized out of Los Angeles. It's all over the world, and animation is a global industry. There's good animation going on all over the place. In fact, this past weekend, Aljon, was an anime convention in Los Angeles.
Yeah, big one.
Big one. There's animation going on all over the world. So some of the work, though, has left Los Angeles for places like Vancouver because of tax credits. But just recently, the state of California just signed a new film tax credit bill for $750 million. And I think there is some inclusion of animation projects in that money as well. So we'll see what happens. But the one thing I will say, Polyvios, is the industry goes in cycles. It goes up and down. It swings back and forth. So whatever's happening now, a year, 2, 3 from now, it'll change. And that's almost guaranteed, because the only thing that is consistent is change.
That is very pragmatic of you, Dave, to say that. Very nice. Well, Polyvios, thank you for your email. I will say that, first of all, Eric Goldberg, last project that I know that he was tapped to do was Drawn to Life, which is a project with Disney Springs and Cirque du Soleil. So I remember seeing him at D23 debut this and talk about it, but it is an amazing show. If you ever get a chance to come out to Walt Disney World Resort and Disney Springs specifically to see Drawn to Life, check out his work with Cirque du Soleil, because it really is an amazing piece. A lot of 2D animation, of course, been brought to life, which is what Disney does really well. So check out Eric's work on that. But I was lucky enough to meet Eric Goldberg at a D23 event, and he couldn't have been nicer. So just a really nice person. I'm glad that, he's still working with Disney Animation, and I hope that there will come a time when more classic animators come back into the fold and do more projects. I hate the fact that we live in a time, and I was talking to, circling back to the Imagineer discussion, Dave, that we live in a gig economy. And
I agree.
Gig by gig, and people are not able to stay with a company and have this team of just animation, professionals that work from project to project to project, and they have team A do this and team B do this, and they just keep on churning out just amazing projects.
Yeah. And by the way, that is part of the problem that has been going on, and why the quality of the animation performances has deteriorated.
100%.
And we've talked about that in the past, but we're not going to get into that now.
Okay.
We still have more comments.
Okay.
On Facebook, we had a lot of comments about the last 2 episodes of the Kevin Lima interview so far. Josie says, really nice guy. Pam up in Canada says he's a super nice guy. Eric Pigors, who we've had on the show, said, great part 1. I love hearing how we all got in the business. Kevin helped me get into the Disney. I remember going to his apartment to go over my portfolio to see what I should change to resubmit. Plus, I'm sure Bill Matthews asking him about me and Kevin saying, give me a chance, helped a lot. Thanks, Kevin, if you see this. So, Kevin, I know actually Kevin did see your comment, Eric. So, and we appreciate you listening, and we enjoyed having you on our show as well. Eric says, really enjoyed this one. So we're getting a lot of good feedback from folks on social media about this series of interviews so far, and it will continue. So that's our mailbag, Aljon.
I love it. Once again, feel free to email us. We would love to get your feedback. And if you want to leave a voicemail message, we would love that as well to check out and discuss in a future episode. All right, Dave, here's our picks of the week. You've been busy with a bunch of really cool movies.
Yeah, I'm going to race through this because I really have seen a lot of films.
Yep.
And I just want, I want to give each one a quick due so people can understand where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So I did go see Jurassic World Rebirth. At the theaters. Stars Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, Luna Blaze, Mahershala
Ali.
Yeah, Mahershala Ali. I have terrible time with people's names.
It's okay.
Mahershala Ali,
yeah.
As Duncan. This is a great cast that I'm sorry was wasted. This is the synopsis is Zora Bennett leads a team of skilled operatives to the most dangerous place on Earth, the island research facility for the original Jurassic Park. Their mission is to secure genetic material from dinosaurs whose DNA can provide life-saving benefits to mankind. As the top-secret expedition becomes more and more risky, they soon make a sinister, shocking discovery that's been hidden from the world for decades. I've got to tell you, Aljon, I felt like this movie was a bunch of vignettes strung together. That's kind of how I feel about it. Rotten Tomatoes gives a 51%. IMDb gives a 6.3 out of 10. Fandango 72%, and 67% of people like this movie. I could take it or leave it. I thought the dinosaur animation was extremely well done, and there were really great, moments in the movie. But just as an overall film, it didn't quite hit the mark. So
Gotcha.
Take it from there.
Yep.
You could probably watch this when it goes on a streamer. The weekend before, I did go see Formula One or F1 with Brad Pitt, and I saw this in IMAX, and let me tell you, this was an incredible film. I loved it. In the 1990s, Sonny Hayes was Formula One's most promising driver until an accident on the track nearly ended his career. 30 years later, the owner of a struggling Formula One team convinces Sonny to return to racing and become the best in the world. Driving alongside the team's hotshot rookie, Sonny soon learns that the road to redemption is not something you can travel alone. Brad Pitt stars as Sonny Hayes, Kerry Condon as Kate, Damson Idris is Joshua Pierce, Javier Bardem is the owner of the race team. He's fabulous. He's always great. I love watching him on screen. The movie's exhilarating, and Rotten Tomatoes gives this 83%. IMDb gives it 7.9 out of 10. And 96% of people like this movie who saw it. I thought this was one of those great. Jerry Bruckheimer is one of the producers on this film. I just thought this was exhilarating. See this in IMAX if you possibly can. It's edge of your seat racing. It's absolutely a fantastic film. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. So there you go. I did see How to Train Your Dragon, Aljon, the live action one.
Great.
Rotten Tomatoes gives a 77%, IMDb 8.1 out of 10, and 93% of people like this movie. You know, I thought this movie was fine. I enjoyed it. I thought the most of the dragon animation was pretty well done, and it was an enjoyable film. I also got to see 28 years later.
Oh, yeah.
It's been almost 3 decades since the rage virus escaped from a biological weapons laboratory. Still living a ruthlessly enforced quarantine, some have found ways to exist amid the infected. One such group of survivors lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single, heavily defended causeway. When one of them decides to venture into the dark heart of the mainland, he soon discovers a mutation that has spread to not only the infected, but other survivors as well. You know, this is a movie you would really like, Aljon. This is like a zombie movie. I actually enjoyed this film.
Oh, that's good.
IMDb gives it 7.1 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 88%.
Not bad.
And 70% of people who saw this movie liked it. Look, folks, this is a zombie movie of sorts, and it's really well done. Ralph Fiennes is in this and is fantastic as Dr. Ian Kelson. You don't really get to see him until like the third act of the movie. But I enjoyed the film. You know me, I don't really like, you know, these types of movies, but I have a sweet spot for the zombie films.
Oh, that's good to know.
On the small screen, I did watch a documentary on Netflix called Titan, the Ocean Gate disaster. Very well done documentary. You obviously know what happens at the end. Rotten Tomatoes gives this documentary 74%. It's just interesting to see the different players that were involved and how this submersible got to a place where it imploded and killed all of the people, including the owner of the company. So there you have it. That's that documentary. I watched season 10 of Cabin Masters, which is a great show I enjoy. There's no shortage of work for Maine-based builder Chase Morrell, whose specialty is renovating rustic cabins and camps all over the Pine Tree State. Working alongside his sister, brother-in-law, and best friend, Morrell contracts with clients to save and transform rundown cabins buried deep in Maine's remote woods, from century-old cottages to lakeside retreats in need of some major repairs. Chase and his team give these dilapidated properties the revivals they have needed for decades. I love this. It's like a reality series. You know, every episode they're renovating a different camp or cabin. I really enjoyed it. Over on Max, Aljon, there's a show called Duster, which I really liked. It's a period piece, which I don't normally gravitate towards, but this stars Josh Holloway, Rachel Hilson, Camille Guadi, and Keith David is in this as well.
Okay.
Right? In the 1970s, a getaway driver encounters a tenacious FBI agent who wants to take his crime family down. That's Rachel Hilson, who plays Nina, the FBI agent. Really great show. I mean, it's supposed to feel like you're in the 70s, so all the costuming and everything is 70s. IMDb gives a 7.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 92%. I really like this show. Check it out over on Max. On Prime, there's a drama series called Art Detectives. It's a 2025 series. There's one season right now. Art-loving D.I. Mick Palmer and D.C. Shazia Malik work for Heritage Crime, the Met's smallest department investigating murders and thefts in the shadowy world of art, antiquities, and priceless artifacts. It's a typical crime series. I really liked it. And it stars Stephen Moyer as D.I. Mick Palmer. And it's got, a changing cast every episode. The IMDb gave it 6.9 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 83%. And 93% of people like this TV show. So check that out. Nice. And then finally, over on Netflix, there's a limited, well, I shouldn't say limited series. There's a series that's dropped. It's a crime series. The season 1. It's called The Waterfront. I don't know if you've seen anything about this. As their storied North Carolina fishing empire decays, the damaged Buckleys grapple to revive their imperiled maritime heritage. Stars Jake Weary as Kane Buckley. Jake Weary was in Animal Kingdom, if you remember that show. Yeah. Which was very good. So it's an ensemble cast. Maria Bello is in this as Belle Buckley. Topher Grace plays Grady, the sort of the villain in the show. Really, really well done. I have to say, I like this show. Rotten Tomatoes only gives a 63%. IMDb gives a 7 out of 10. And it says 41% of people like this TV show, which isn't great. But I liked it. I thought it was well done. But think of it as a soap opera. And that's exactly what this is. It's a soap opera with a crime family. So that's probably why I enjoyed it. It was a crime family.
There you go.
So that's what I've been watching. I've got you all caught up. I've tried to race through it as quickly as I could.
Good.
Aljon, what have you been watching?
Oh, man, we've been busy, of course, on vacation, but we did see some things. And recently on Disney Plus, they released a brand new documentary that is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. And Bryce Dallas Howard, you might know her from, of course, acting in Jurassic Park. But also she's been a great director in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. She consistently does great episodes of those shows, and I guess she's the daughter of Ron Howard. 100% she is.
Yeah,
and she's
so talk about having a great director as a mentor.
100%. And of course, I love Ron Howard. We love Bryce Dallas as well. And she did a documentary exploring the extraordinary relationship between animals and people around the world called Pets. So if you look and just simply type in IMDb Pets 2025, you'll find it. But this is a documentary with a lot of heart. We love our pets. We love, of course, we've rescued a bunch of cats here in this home. And once we see that there's a documentary about pets, we have to click on it. We watched it, and it highlights dogs, cats, pigs, goats, birds of prey, and Pets takes us on a lovely journey that celebrates love, loss, and the licks along the way. And this documentary is one that it's a format that everyone's familiar with the talking heads and the backgrounds and everything. So they have these little interstitials they put in with all of these pet videos, wonderful pet stories, and it's nicely stitched together. I think, this probably is a part of her contract where she does these kind of interesting projects that she's interested in, and the heart comes through. There's some great stories, great people highlighted that have big hearts, that rescue animals, that children that and adults that just love their pets so much. So if you love it, if you love pets, you'll love this one. We went back into you can of course stream it on Disney Plus. This one goes back to Tubi, and you can watch this on Tubi or Freevee, I believe. Which, by the way, Dave, did you hear that Amazon's folding Freevee into their Prime Video service? They won't have another tile for it or an app for it. So Freevee's moving into Amazon. But this is a classic film from 1987, Can't Buy Me Love. And this film is one of the early vehicles for Patrick Dempsey. So he is a young one in this film. An outcast secretly pays the most popular girl in school $1,000 to pretend to be his girlfriend for a month. And of course, craziness ensues. The cast includes a very young Patrick Dempsey, who plays the main character, Ronald Miller, Amanda Peterson, who was a prolific actress back in the early 90s, late 80s, plays Cindy Mancini. Unfortunately, she passed away back in 2015 from an overdose, and it's very sad. But also Seth Green, a very young Seth Green, is in this. Let's see, Gerardo Mejia, who was Rico Suave in the late 80s music fame, was in this film. Amy Dolans, who has been in different films, has been in this as well. This is just, one of those kind of she's all that. It's a girl, the most popular girl in school, who gets in a pickle, and the nerd of the school helps her out and pays her to get out of her, this issue, and in turn finds himself. And of course, he ditches his friends and he learns about himself. So it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, you need to, because you get to see all these actors when they were super young. The kids are into Star Wars now, Dave. And so we go back into the time machine and checked out the Ewok Adventure, which is a made-for-TV movie from 1984. And it is streaming on Disney Plus. It's about Wicket the Ewok and his friends agree to help two shipwrecked human children, Mace and Sindel, on their quest to find their parents. I did not know this, but it is written by George Lucas for TV.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this was aired back in 1984. It serves as kind of a in-between, prequel to Return of the Jedi. And it's very interesting. I would say that for a made-for-TV movie, it does really well. It's 5.3 rating on IMDb. And it's fun for the kids. Check it out. It's fun. I will say that. It is fun. It's dated, but it's fun. And George Lucas writing something for TV is very interesting. I mean, they really wanted to cash in on that Star Wars, for sure. Speaking of Star Wars, because they're celebrating Disney's 70th anniversary, they actually filmed in high definition Star Wars Rise of the Resistance for Disney Plus. So check it out. The kids went on it. We enjoyed it. Of course, it's one of, I believe, just a feat of Imagineering, Rise of the Resistance. So now you get to check out what it's like. And it's a very high production value, as you can imagine. We also saw behind the scenes of the Disney Treasure streaming on Disney Plus. It's great to see the behind the scenes of the Disney Treasure and their new island. There's Imagineering. Joe Rohde, in fact, talks a little bit about how the Disney Treasure and the different stuff they put in the ship is done. So if you like those kind of Discovery Channel type of specials about the ship, you'll love this. We also checked out Vetrix Effects on YouTube. It has these really cool documentaries and interviews. Daryl Strummer was a guitar player for Phil Collins, and he's recently Vetrix Effects channel on YouTube. They've had Wendy Melvoin from Prince and the Revolution. They've had the guitar player for Huey Lewis and the News. They talked to a bunch of different guitar players, and if you're into music and what it was like, especially this one with Daryl Strummer, to work with Phil Collins and the genius of Phil Collins and the genius of his own playing, how he worked as a jazzer, muso, to working with Phil Collins and Genesis all these years, and he breaks down some of his iconic guitar parts. You'll really appreciate this channel because of the in-depth way that they cover a musician who is normally in the background. These musicians spend their entire careers backing up some of the biggest names in music, and it's a really fascinating take. So if you love guitarists and musos, if you will, playing in the background, you'll really appreciate the Daryl Strummer episode, Vetrix Effects, on YouTube. And then we saw the penultimate episode of Criminal Minds for this year. The race is on to try to find out who is behind the network of serial killers that are going outsmarting the Behavioral Science Unit, the BAU of the FBI. They're taking a lot of twists and turns. It's a really fascinating season and some great ensemble acting. So check out Criminal Minds on Paramount Plus. Really dig what's going on, and I can't wait for the end. That's what I've been watching this week, Dave. So if you have something you'd like to recommend or want our take on, please let us know. Send us those emails, and we'll review it for an upcoming episode.
And by the way, Aljon, it's worth noting that every time, like when you and I were in Nashville at the Animation Y'all Expo, how many people came up and said they loved this segment of our show?
Everybody.
I mean, it's just, I mean, we constantly get notes on people saying they've discovered shows because we talk about them. And that's the whole point. We're trying to tell people about all the great content that's out there, and sometimes not great content.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What to avoid? Well, I mean, but make the decision for yourself. It's like reading Rainbow, you make the call, you decide for yourself, but hey, there's so much stuff out there. Hopefully we help weed through some of it.
And by the way, like I mentioned with Jurassic World Rebirth, it's the #1 movie this past weekend. I didn't think it was that good of a film. In fact, when the movie ended, there were a few people that applauded, and I'm walking out of the theater going, "What are you applauding for? This movie was not that good."
But
other people viewed it as being good.
Before we move on, I have to say that I think that there's a cultural divide between people that remember cinema and the stories and the new audiences that they're trying to attract. And I think that's the difference in the way of storytelling right now. But I tell you, there was an article I read about how Tom Cruise saved the movie industry. And I happen to agree with that, even though I'm not a fan of, some of Tom Cruise's work. I can really appreciate his craft and the way he brings people into the theater. And I think there's that difference of the old school, cinema, Hollywood, big blockbuster. This is what brings people in, so there's those John Wicks and the Mission Impossibles and those type of films. And then you have this film, clearly, I believe, just from what I've seen and heard. Now, I will see Jurassic World Rebirth, but I think that's made for an entirely different audience, Dave.
Yeah, no, I get it. And by the way, you mentioned Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, as I've said before, is the greatest film action star in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Of all time? Is he the GOAT, Dave?
Of all time. He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT action hero. And by the way, the Motion Picture Academy is giving him an honorary Academy Award.
He deserves it.
At next year's Academy Awards, he's getting an honorary Academy Award, and he deserves it because of everything he's done for the motion picture industry and trying getting people back into the theaters, which I think is fantastic.
100%. Well, we look forward to checking that out. So yeah, let's move on to
Skull Rock Podcast. This week in Disney and pop culture.
Speaking of getting butts in seats, Dave, the box office Jurassic World Rebirth keeps Dino franchise alive with $141 million in opening weekend. It's $312 million globally. That is huge, Dave.
Yeah, no, it's a huge opening. And look, it just goes to show you that people still love dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. I thought the dinosaur animation was fantastic. It was amazing.
Can I tell you,
there's
Dave?
Really there's some amazing moments in this movie. It's just, in my view, not a great movie.
Yeah, so by that metric, it does bring families out. I will say, Dave, just to circle back on my trip to Walt Disney World, the kids loved the dinosaur ride over at Animal Kingdom. They loved it, even though they were scared and cried and screamed as in all the places because, they are still very young, but they loved it. They love dinos and they love the dino gift shop. So, of course, it's going to do really well. In box office news, of course, as it takes a cake for the holiday season. And by the way, I wish you and our listeners a great Independence Day weekend. I hope everybody had a good time. But this is the 5th best showing ever for the holiday, while the 3-day gross would mark the 4th biggest domestic opening of 2025 to date. It's no small feat considering July 4th fell on a Friday this year, meaning many moviegoers were distracted by holiday outings. So very, very good, in fact. And I will say what isn't good is Elio. It limps to a record low 21 million, as it is and How to Train Your Dragon stays at number 1. Now, 28 years later that you talked about, Danny Boyle's zombie sequel opens in second place with 30 million. So Universal's How to Train Your Dragon.
This is old news.
Oh, is it old? Oh, it is old.
Yeah, this is from a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Elio though was a disaster for Disney Pixar.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that film is kind of riddled with a lot of production woes.
You saw 8 minutes of it down at Walt Disney World. Yeah, right? So what was that all about?
Well, we took the kids to go cool off and see over there at the D23 Theater, and we saw, I guess 8 minutes of the film, and it looked fun. This kid Elio, who's kind of an outcast, wants to make first contact with an alien species and gets abducted, abducted, and gets taken aboard a ship and befriends a bunch of alien species. One of them happens to be, unbeknownst to him, is a kid of basically the alien who is wanting to threaten to take over the entire Earth. He's a leader of these species of squishy aliens that are, seemingly huggable and harmless, but of course they are a warring alien race that uses these monster armor to basically enslave a bunch of different alien species. So it's kind of, one of these buddy films where they get to learn about each other and learn about humanity. But that's what you can glean from, 8 minutes of the movie, which looks great. I mean, it looks like a animation style of Luca in terms of the squishiness of the characters and the rounded animation. It seems to be like what Pixar's doing. That's the kind of style that they're going for. But the kids seem to like it. But I don't know if and they might like a 2-hour film or 120-minute film based on that, or 90-minute film rather based on that. But I don't know. Clearly, it didn't resonate with audiences as it's bombing at the box office.
Yeah.
So, how about this, Dave? Ozzy Osbourne and Back to the Beginning farewell concert. This is Black Sabbath's last hurrah. Ozzy, of course, has been riddled with a bunch of health issues over the past few years. I mean, he's no spring chicken by any means, but more than 50 years after forming Black Sabbath in Birmingham, England, Ozzy and his pioneering metal band Black Sabbath are ready to retire from playing and making music. And
I don't believe it for a second. Every one of these bands that says this is the final concert tour or whatever, they wind up doing something at some point in the future, and they'll say, oh, well, yeah, Black Sabbath is doing 3 nights at Caesar's Palace or something. It's not a tour, but it's a residency. It's different, I mean, come on, I don't believe whenever any of these bands say it's the last tour, the final concerts or whatever. I just don't believe it.
Well, I happen to have worked with Tony Iommi, who is the lead guitarist for Black Sabbath, and he is probably one of the most gentle human beings I've ever met. Just a really lovely gentleman. And, the bill, not only did Black Sabbath, close things out, but the show started at 3 and it had an all-star group of musicians taking the stage, from Tom Morello with Rage Against the Machine, Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm, Nuno Betancourt of the band Extreme. They were all there joining on jams. It was hosted by Jason Momoa, aka Aquaman. So there's a lot of stuff going on during that show with legends, jamming out. Steven Tyler Dave of Aerosmith was out there doing some show tribute to them. So it was really cool. So check it out on YouTube. Footage is there. There is going to be, and of course, Metallica was there as well, and Guns N' Roses. So it was huge. So it was a big weekend for that. I'm sure there's a concert video that will be surfacing soon.
I hope so.
Well produced. Speaking of concerts, of course, Oasis make a mighty return after 16 years with a blowout UK gig. So it was big in the UK. From Birmingham all the way, Liam and Noel Gallagher reuniting for some shows. Dave, I'm a huge Oasis fan. And this is just the very beginning. People waiting 16 years for this moment. I know people that have, from here, from the States, that bought tickets and flew all the way over there to go celebrate and watch the show. Man, it's going to be a crazy, crazy tour as they lean into the fall with this. But, Oasis fans, I was in a band with my brother, and I was lucky to make it out alive.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just one of those things where, we brothers, they know how to push each other's buttons. So let's see how far the two brothers get on this. Speaking of music, Miley Cyrus is something beautiful. She's been touting it over the past few weeks. Debuting July 16th, we have a new album and visual album coming to Disney Plus. This is a second, I believe, for Miley Cyrus. I believe during the pandemic, she released a backyard concert that did really well on Disney Plus, where she had that video for Flowers and everything. It was just a really great album. And she's really maturing as an artist, and I can appreciate that. Miley Cyrus is Something Beautiful, the full-length visual companion to Miley Cyrus's latest album, will launch July 16th on Disney Plus and Hulu in the U.S., and the film will also be available internationally through Disney Plus, as well as Canada and other regions. She continues her long-standing relationship with Disney following her induction as a Disney legend. Of course, I was there for that, for D23 in 2019. Partnering once again for Miley Cyrus, Something Beautiful, for a one-of-a-kind pop opera fueled by fantasy, featuring 13 original new songs from her visual album, Something Beautiful. It's produced by Miley Cyrus, XYZ Films, and Panos Cosmosis, and Sony Music Vision and Columbia Records and Live Nation. Boy, that's huge. That should be interesting, Dave. Were you able to catch any of that musical content that Miley put out last time?
No,
it's good. It's very pop, so it's not like the Elton John special.
I don't think I'm her demographic.
I don't think so, Dave, but I think you can appreciate the production. You can certainly appreciate the production.
That's right.
Alrighty then.
Obituary roll call.
Dave, it's been several weeks, and we do have a lot of passings. Very surprisingly, Michael Madsen's from Reservoir Dogs passes away at the young age of 67. He made the Kill Bill films, The Hateful Eight, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Quentin Tarantino. Seemed to be one of Quentin Tarantino's go-to actors. He was 67.
Very
sad.
I mean, so shockingly young as far as I'm concerned. And, I think they've got to do an autopsy to figure out what happened to him. I hope they do anyway.
Yeah. I mean, once again, he was found unresponsive by deputies responding to a 911 call at his Malibu home in LA County. So that's what happened to him. So, he's been in so many great movies, kind of an ensemble, I guess more of a character actor, War Games in 1983. His face. He's been in The Natural.
Oh, God. I mean, he's been in so much stuff,
So many things. I was very shocked.
I think he's got over 100 screen credits.
100%. So, go back and check it out. I do believe one of his best roles was in Reservoir Dogs. I would say to go back and check him out. Also, Keith Coley, Admiral Piet in a pair of Star Wars films. Once again, his face. Admiral Piet dies at the age of 87. This veteran British actor worked often with Ken Russell and members of Monty Python and played a Soviet colonel in Clint Eastwood's Firefox. Admiral Piet, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And once again, after Darth Vader force chokes a bunch of his admirals and his staff for botching capturing the rebel base, Admiral Piet is now put in charge. And once again, dispense with the pleasantries. Let's go ahead and get those rebels. And man, it's just once again, he died Monday at his Ashford home in Kent, England, for complications of COVID and pneumonia, according to his agent. Very sad indeed, but he's got a list and a resume that is pretty long, so go out there and check it out. Also, in passing this week, Rick Hurst, the actor on Dukes of Hazzard, dies at 79. Deputy Cletus Hogg, for 5 seasons on the CBS show, was a big hit on Friday nights before leaving ABC for an ABC version of Fawlty Towers that didn't last long. What else can I say about this, Dave? I mean, he, once again, one of those great actors who's been on that.
He's a great character actor, and I think it's just sad that he was 79. I mean, that's not that old.
Yeah. Hearst showed up as Cletus, the second cousin to the twice-removed corrupt county commissioner Boss Hogg in 1979 on the 11th episode of Dukes of Hazzard. I will say he's one of those awesome characters from that show, and he's been on TV for many, many years. Also, very shocked about this. I followed this man's career from the get-go. Gillian McMahon, former Fantastic Four and Charmed and Nip Tuck co-star, passed away this week at the age of 56, according to the Hollywood Reporter. He had a battle with cancer. I've seen everything Jill McMahon has been in. I was a fan of his.
This was very sad. I mean, too young to go.
Too young. I remember watching him in Charmed, and then to Nip Tuck, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and of course in the FBI TV show recently he left, and I can only imagine he left because he was diagnosed with cancer and was kind of secretly battling it. And a lot of actors that starred with him shared very touching tributes, including Michael Chiklis, who I met before. And Michael Chiklis seems to be a really nice guy, and they starred in Fantastic Four movies together. And it's just really sad. I don't know what to say about that because I'm such a big fan of his. And then this just in, Richard Greenberg, Tony-winning playwright of Take Me Out, dies at the age of 67. For 30 years, he's been one of life's great pleasures to know. Rich in his writing, dazzling, humane, wild, funny. Greenberg's friend and theater director Robert Falls wrote in a recent tribute, once again, very sad when these things happen. He died at the age of 67. I'm not familiar with his work so much as he won a Tony Award for Best Play in 2003 for Take Me Out. I'm very unfamiliar with his work, but it is always sad when these things happen. All right, team, guess what? It is now time for our main event. And sit back. It is the month of Kevin Lima, so let's sit back and relax and listen to part 3 of Kevin Lima's interview right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Hey, let's chat.
Let's chat.
So let's chat now. Let's chat afterwards. And he said, let's chat again.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, we are back again for week 3. Can you believe this? With animation director, Kevin Lima. Kevin, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back. I'm kind of shocked I have this much story to tell.
Something, I have a feeling we're going to be here for a couple more weeks, my friends.
Okay.
Because last week we kind of ended with the Goofy movie and you being offered Tarzan. And I wanted to dive in a little bit and sort of start there and talk about, how Tarzan developed and also some of the technological breakthroughs that came through with that project. And speaking of, Deep Canvas in particular.
Right.
But how Jeffrey, was it Jeffrey or was it Michael Eisner that wanted you to? Michael Eisner wanted you to do it.
Well, Jeffrey handed me the book. Well, I was finishing. I was in Paris finishing a Goofy movie, and he handed me the book, and he wanted me to do it as a satellite studio movie. Right? He thought that we could open up a studio in Vancouver. I went up there, looked for homes, looked for a space, and then he was fired. And so Michael kind of used it as a way to keep me at the studio. And my guess would be sort of like, laugh in Jeffrey's face a little bit, say, haha, I got the guy that you wanted. Because Jeffrey was, he was wooing me to go over to DreamWorks.
And I think at that period, and I'm sure you'd acknowledge this, that Jeffrey was calling a lot of people. He was really trying to raid Disney Animation and take as many people as he possibly could to help set up DreamWorks.
I think from Jeffrey's side, he was trying to get even with Michael.
Yes.
So it became this little personal battle, and feature animation became the battleground.
Yeah. And then, the other interesting thing is that piece of property where they built the DreamWorks campus.
I know, right down the street, right?
But the whole industrial park around it had been for sale for a while, and Michael Eisner had balked at the price for it. He didn't want to spend it. He didn't want to spend the money for it. But as soon as Jeffrey got that piece of land to put the DreamWorks campus on, Michael bought the whole industrial park so that Jeffrey was
surrounding it
was landlocked.
Oh boy,
that's how the big boys piss on each other.
Kids, just take it into the schoolyard and hammer it out.
So Michael wanted you to do Tarzan and wanted it to be done at Disney Feature Animation as opposed to a satellite studio.
Yeah, correct. And I knew, I already knew all the players over at Feature Animation, so I was friendly with Peter Schneider and Tom Schumacher. So I think they came on board easily, and we started to make a movie.
And what was the first steps? I mean, I'd like our listeners to understand when a feature gets sort of starts developing, it's not really greenlit. Everybody thinks, there's some guy chomping on a cigar and he goes, we're green lighting this picture, but it's really not like that, right? Because you slowly start developing, you're hitting milestones until you start assembling a crew, right?
Yeah. And it can, and it can go away at any moment.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. Everybody starts to develop movies, or not everybody, but directors start to develop movies at Disney Feature Animation, and you put everything you've got into it, and sometimes they don't come to fruition. So yeah, it was that. They wanted to just put us into, development and see where it went. The first thing was I had to find a co-director. So I wanted to, because I had done a Goofy movie alone, I said, why can't I do it alone? I know how to do this. Look at me, brash little kid coming in saying, I can do this by myself. I don't need a co-director. But they said, no, it's too big a job here. It's going to take a longer amount of time. There's more levels of approvals. There's more artists all under one roof. So I went out looking for a co-director. And I found that co-director ultimately in Chris Buck, who had been way back my very first supervising animator on Soccer Mania, Goofy and Soccer Mania, Sport Goofy and Soccer Mania. You can probably hear my Rhode Island accent come through when I say words like that, like soccer.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just
Soccer Mania.
Just like when I say coffee.
Coffee, soccer. So Chris was at first a little reluctant because he said that film's been made so many times. Why do we make it in animation? But we had some conversations about it, and I think it'd be interesting to hear his side of the story at some point. So you might want to contact him. But he said I think he was in the doctor's office or the dentist's office, and he saw a National Geographic about mountain gorillas. And he took that as a sign that he should take it on. So we became co-directors, and we just dove into the process. And Disney Feature Animation supports you in big ways as you begin these projects. Not only do they give you a writer, but we hired a head of story. We brought over Brian Pimentel from a Goofy movie. He became our head of story. We started with a small but potent visual development team, and we just started exploring what the movie could be.
And I think it's important, again, for our listeners, because we have folks that are just breaking into the business that listen to these interviews.
Right.
I think it's important for people to know that you're bringing people on that that their capabilities, right? So
absolutely,
really,
especially at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to get a movie, you're trying to move a movie forward, so you want to work with people that you share a sensibility with, that you have a shorthand with, that are excellent visualists, that can convey an idea to your executives, right? Who don't always see the film,
right?
So I think we were lucky because the material is pretty potent in it having been made many, many times. I think Tarzan is the second most filmed property behind Dracula.
Okay. Wow.
So there's
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was, so there's a lot of visual reference. People know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really our job to show them something unexpected, right? How is this going to live in animation? How is it going to be different than every other time we've seen it? And that's what we did. And we probably spent, a good year.
Really cracking that nut.
Really cracking the nut. Storyboarding some sequences. We brought on a couple of storyboard artists. Kevin Harkey came on.
Oh man, he's fantastic.
Oh yeah, he actually did our very first sequence that we put up on boards and on reels, which was the baboon chase. And he did that as we were writing the script and developing the movie. We knew that there was going to be this moment in which Tarzan had to save Jane in a jungle, action sequence. So how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
And so we just sent him off with an idea, with a concept, and he totally pulled that piece together. And it's pretty much as it was boarded that very first time in the final film.
Wow.
So with a couple of added gooses that we discovered along the way, right?
Did you guys go on a research trip? I can't remember if there was a research trip. Where did you go for that?
We went to Africa, of course.
Did? Okay.
And we went on a safari in Kenya. And then the real piece of the trip that informed the movie in a huge way was we traveled to Uganda and we trekked and sat with the mountain gorillas.
Wow.
So we got a real sense of what that world felt like and what it, the visceral experience of sitting, 2 feet from a silverback gorilla.
And so let me ask you, when you say you were sitting 2 feet, you literally were in the wild and a few feet away from these
oh,
gorillas?
Yeah, literally.
And were they docile? Were they aggressive?
They were both. Both.
How did you feel safe?
They were acclimated, right? So they were used to people coming up. I mean, there's a whole forest sort of economy that's based on trekking the mountain gorillas, and there are only specific groups that you go to see. But your guides have, 3-foot-long machetes.
Okay.
That they not only use to cut through the jungle, but they also were there at the ready. They had guns, right? Yeah. So they were sitting there with shotguns and pistols. So, you felt fairly safe. You're told to do certain things, like you're supposed to react and act in a specific way when you're around them. I'm a little bit of I push the boundaries sometimes. They tell you not to look in the eyes of the silverback gorilla. I looked in his eyes. He didn't really do anything. He just looked back at me. And there was one point though when we got between the silverback and his family, because they're all moving around you, right?
Sure.
They're not just sitting there in one place like you're having a conversation at a restaurant. They're they're foraging and they're playing. And we separated. We got between the big guy and his family, and he didn't charge us, but he walked right by us. I would say he was 12 inches away from me.
Wow.
Just walked right by me and just said, "Get the hell out of my way."
Wow.
And we just backed up and he pushed us aside as he walked and went over with his family. And then we adjusted and moved around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I will tell you, I have a silverback story
You do?
because I was down at Walt Disney World at the Animal Kingdom. Very
Right.
briefly, I just want to tell you because I was fearful. But I was there with Roy E. Disney, and we went into the veterinary building, and they were doing a tooth extraction on a silverback gorilla. But the silverback gorilla was sedated; he was out on a table while this veterinary dentist worked on him, and we were standing right next to him. And I mean, the hands were bigger than my head, and it was just so like frightening to some degree. If this thing came woke up, screaming,
where the hell am I?
I'm having a tooth removed, So, anyway, but so I really would have been incredibly fearful.
You know what we really found out though is that beyond the fear, we were introduced to a family. Right? That's what we really saw when we were with them, is that they felt in many ways familiar, right? That they were displaying or existing as a unit, as a community, as a family. And that's where the whole idea started to come from, this two worlds, one family, which is really about humans and apes, or how we coexist with each other, the bigger thematic idea. But really what we discovered is they are a family, and that in many ways they share so many of our attributes.
And there's a level of intelligence.
Yes, and we maybe wouldn't have gotten to that if we hadn't sat with them. And that's really what those trips are about, right? It's really about discovering something that you couldn't discover from looking at a picture in a book,
or
watching a movie, right? No matter how many times you watch a documentary and it says, they are a collective community, blah, blah, blah. You don't really feel it until you're sitting there as a community. We were a community of artists, sort of sitting and interacting with a community of apes. And it was remarkable. And it informed the movie in a big way.
Yeah, I would imagine it did. How long were you guys in Africa? What was that, a 2-week trip?
Yeah, we were there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And
you were you in the Congo? Where were you for the silverback gorillas?
We were in Uganda.
Oh, in Uganda. Okay.
The mountains of Uganda.
Wow.
So, there's still issues. There's still political issues there. And in fact, the place where we stayed got raided a year later, and a group of German tourists were killed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not, it's a dangerous place to be, or it was. I'll tell you the other thing that we really discovered by going on this trip, and it led to the great technical breakthrough of the movie, was that every place we went with the gorillas, we were like chest high in vegetation. And we were always pushing through things and moving, ferns and giant palms out of the way in order to move through the space. And Dan St. Pierre, our production designer, then I think he was our head of layout at that moment. We were talking about how do we do this in the movie, because typically, animation wants to be on a flat ground plane where you don't interact with any of the vegetation or the scenery. You just don't want to touch it because then it has to be animated. By hand, and typically that looks pretty bad because you can always tell the bush that's going to be moved because it's cell painted. And so we were talking about that, and we brought that conundrum back to the studio, and that's where Deep Canvas came from.
Yeah. Can you sort of in layman's term explain Deep Canvas to our listeners?
In layman's terms, what it is that it's geometric forms that are painted with brushstrokes. So it allows those brushstrokes to move organically because they're tied to the geometric form. So it took a whole bunch of experimentation to do that. Eric Daniels came on, and he really guided that whole process. He is the wizard behind that, that new tool. And we were very, very quickly, we did a test that from we just did a test of Tarzan moving through the trees. We had already been talking to Glenn Keane at that moment, the great animator, Glenn Keane. And we were talking about how Tarzan could move through the jungle, and the idea that because he's animated, he'd be able to move in a way that no other human could move.
Yeah.
Right. And that led to Glenn doing a lot of experimenting, looking at surfing and skateboarding and extreme sports. And so we designed a test in which Tarzan could move through the trees. It would be a test for Glenn to try that out, and a test for Deep Canvas, on the other hand, to see how we get to something that looks like a background painting. And I wouldn't say it happened smoothly, but there weren't big issues.
Mm-hmm.
It was very well thought out, and it came together. And by the end of it, we were so impressed with what we had created that we put that scene in the movie.
Yeah, so essentially they would animate the wireframe, a camera move through the jungle, and
you'd work with an animator, so the animator would understand the path of action and how quickly the camera had to move.
And then those wireframe branches and trees would actually be printed out on registered animation paper.
They would, so the animator could then animate.
He could register his 2D animation to those 3D shapes,
right? And that was an interactive process,
right?
So sometimes things would be a little slow, and Glenn would want more speed, so we'd go back to the wireframe and replot.
Yeah,
right. The camera,
sure,
right. So that lived hand in hand, the layout department and the animator working together.
And just like the ballroom to Beauty and the Beast, the surfing through the jungle, through the tree canopies,
right,
really became sort of that iconic sequence from Tarzan that people pointed to and say, "Boy, that was a huge technological breakthrough."
No, absolutely, and in fact, that scene became the teaser trailer for the movie.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
I
didn't remember that.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
The studio came back, the marketing department came back with this big, join the party, like they did for Hunchback, right? They wanted to make everything seem like it was fun and games. And we said, no, this is an adventure movie. Use this scene. Whatever you do, just use this scene and people will come to see this movie. So luckily they listened.
Yeah. And once that got worked out, I mean, essentially you were still adding more production people, and the movie just
slowly it chugs along,
and it gets a release date. They say, it has to be finished by this date. And
absolutely,
we're going to release it.
They put you in line.
Yeah, they put you in the
schedule
queue.
You into the release,
and then that's what everybody's working towards.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
And what would you say? You spent a year and a half to 2 years in sort of the development, research, and boarding process, and about a year of animation production.
Yeah, I think
something
that's
like
true.
that.
It's probably I started in I want to say probably early '95.
Right.
The movie came out in mid '99.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. Okay. So it's about 3.5 years.
So is it 3.5 years? Is that only 3 years?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Four.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we wrote a script. We wrote a draft of the script while we were doing all these other, exploring all these other things. Tab Murphy wrote that first draft. From there, we made some decisions. One of the big decisions we made early on was that in Tab's draft, they moved from Africa to London, as was traditional with most of the Tarzan retellings, right? Tarzan goes to the human world. And we felt like, well, boy, we spent all this time, with this family, to just leave them and start a new movie with a new set of characters in the third act. We wanted to see if we could actually stay in the jungle. So we brought the humans to them and played out Tarzan's, journey to becoming or to discovering his ancestry in the jungle.
Yeah.
So we reworked that. We started boarding pretty early on, and just everything started to happen at once.
Right.
right? So you're boarding, you're writing, you're boarding, you're animating, you're designing, you're laying, everything sort of jumbles on itself.
Yeah, there's that period where everybody is, sort of in the thick of it.
Yeah,
and each of those departments is feeding the machine.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So. And everybody has their own deadlines, and you're all moving towards that release date. And we were very, very, I say lucky, but Tom Schumacher and Peter Schneider, the two head executives at Disney Feature Animation, were very involved in the Lion King stage show while we were making Tarzan. So they were very much, dealing with their first love, which gave us a little bit more room, I think.
Did it give you a little bit of breathing room?
Yeah, we did feel like we had breathing room. Like we got to really make the movie that we wanted to make. They didn't throw out the movie.
Yeah, they were there, but they weren't constantly looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, they had other things to balance out their time. So they didn't question us as vigorously, maybe. They didn't spend 100% of their brain power on us.
Right.
So our process was pretty smooth. We didn't throw out the movie at any point. We certainly had struggles figuring out specific character arcs. And we tried, especially with the arrival of the humans, we tried that sequence again and again and again to get it to where it is. But there was no mass, we threw out half the movie or we started completely over.
Which, as you well know, was typical at Disney Animation during the Renaissance, and I'm sure prior to that as well. In the Golden Age, there were moments where sequences or parts of the movie, an act, would be completely tossed, and you start from scratch.
Right? No, absolutely. I'd seen it happen on Aladdin. It happened.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Aladdin, Lion King,
exactly.
Beauty and the Beast, all of them had gone through those sort of convulsions,
Exactly. Yeah. So we felt somewhat lucky that we didn't have a wholesale, restart on the movie.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely rewarding, right?
Yeah.
I got to meet I got to reconnect with a whole lot of people that I worked with at the beginning of my Disney career.
Sure. And a lot of, I would say a lot of CalArts classmates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and I met a whole lot of new people, and I got to bring along the French studio because Glenn Keane was living in France. We convinced him to come onto the movie, but his thing was that he wanted to stay in France. So we had the idea, let's give you Tarzan. You can do it all in Paris at the Paris studio. I've worked with the Paris studio, so I know all the animators already, which made that very, very easy. I understood their strengths and some of their weaknesses, so I could be useful.
Sure.
In casting. And they handled all of Tarzan. Plus Sabor, the leopard, because Sabor mostly interacts, almost all of the time, interacts with Tarzan. So there was all that interplay between the two of them.
Yeah.
So it made sense for them to stay together.
Now, did you go over there?
We went over there
once
or twice during the animation process. But I'll tell you, by this moment in time, we had it wasn't called Zoom then, but we actually had a connection.
Yeah, there was a an early video conferencing system in place, and I would imagine that those one or two trips over to Paris were really goodwill trips.
They absolutely were.
The director is in the house, so to speak, and
we all get together. We have a drink in the evening.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, which is good for morale. I mean, those things are always good.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So I was able, in that case, on Goofy Movie, I made all these VHS tapes and I sent them out. On this movie, I got to actually act out with them in the room. So Glenn would be in Paris on camera. I'd be in LA, in Burbank on camera, and I would act things out and I would get up on the table and, Glenn used to love hitting the record button when I would start and then laugh because he'd print something out of me climbing on the table. And but it made it much more immediate, which was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And the production, as I recall, went relatively smoothly.
Yeah, it was smooth. I think at the end of the day, we kind of got scolded for being the most expensive Disney animated movie ever made.
At that point.
At that point in time. I had to push back a little bit and say, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You had a whole effects department out of work, and you asked us to take them on, and you wouldn't charge them to our movie.
Right.
And guess what? They charged them to our movie.
Right.
So that's why our movie has a lot of effects in it.
Yeah.
Because we were told, here, take this extra group of 40 people. They're out of work. Keep them. Involved. Keep them working. So we use them. Which was great for us because our movie looks fantastic. I mean, from a production standpoint and visual standpoint.
I mean, visually, it's a beautiful film. It's absolutely gorgeous film. Were you when the movie completed? And I just before I get to this question, I want to step back and just touch on the music. Because Phil Collins was a huge part of this, the creating the songs. And the soundtrack to the film, and of course, the great Chris Montan, the music executive, was heavily involved.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that process and the song?
Yeah. Well, we knew we were making another movie that took place in Africa, so we had to think about how does our movie sound different than The Lion King.
Sure.
Lion King is all vocally driven, right? It's a lot of vocal rhythms, so we thought maybe we could take a whole other approach and make it percussion driven. So what we did was there were two artists. Well, first we asked Peter Gabriel to do it, and he turned us down.
Really?
As he had turned down every other movie that they had offered him in the past. I think, I forget what the other one was. Pixar offered him a movie.
What was there a reason behind, what was his thinking on turning it down?
He didn't really give us a reason.
Yeah.
What we were told is that he didn't think he could work in the big corporate structure.
Okay, got it. Okay, and that makes sense. I think there's artists like a Peter Gabriel that can't be put in that kind of a box.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think that's true of a lot of those star pop artists, right?
Yeah, sure.
That working with or for someone else is difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had this idea with Chris Montan. We talked about all this. We had this idea of bringing a group of singers into a room and having them sing the songs of two high-level pop artists, recording artists. And those two artists were Sting and Phil Collins.
Okay.
So we had people come in because we thought, typically in a musical, the songs are not sung by the artist. So we wanted to hear what it would sound like. So we brought songs from those two artists into a room. We had like 4 people sing for us, just to get a sense. And to us, 2 things came together. One was the percussion and Phil's sort of that's who he is first and foremost. He's a percussionist.
Yeah.
And In the Air Tonight was a big, that was like we kept doing that to each other when we were pitching the storyboards. Like that sound would happen. And the other was that his lyric content felt more immediate to us, felt maybe more emotional.
There was more of a connection.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt like it could live more in the mouths of our characters.
Mm-hmm.
So we went, at the same time we were concerned about, and I remember saying many, many times in every music meeting, like, I don't think we can have a naked man stand on a branch and sing an I Want song. Right. I don't think that's going to work. That's just going to seem ridiculous.
Sure.
So we were dealing with that problem. So we thought, well, maybe Phil would sing some of the songs and maybe the humans would come in and sing. They would sing their songs and you'd get this kind of rub against each other. So we went to Geneva and we had to convince Phil to do the movie. He wasn't sold at all.
Yeah.
And so we spent 2 days with him. We talked about the movie. He started to get excited. We talked about specific, song placements. He had read the treatment, and he signed on.
Yeah.
And so we returned triumphant I think on our return trip, we actually stopped in London, and Glenn Keane met us in London, and we convinced Glenn to to animate Tarzan, and so we were on our way.
And just for our listeners, Phil Collins was a really nice guy.
He's a great guy.
Yeah,
it's surprising. There's no ego there, and I think he also felt like he was putting himself in our hands, right? We were going to be his mentors and help him through the process.
Yeah.
You know, me, Chris Buck, Chris Montan, we're going to be there at every moment with him.
I remember coming out of an elevator in the animation building during that period, and I walked out, and Phil Collins came like right towards me to go on the elevator. And I looked and I said, "Hi," and he goes, "How you doing?" And got on the elevator, and I'm walking down the hall going, "Hey, that was Phil Collins." But those are the typical things that happened in the animation building from time to time. They
did. Yeah. And sometimes you'd get like this wave of whispers that somebody was in, Olivia Newton-John's in the building.
Yeah.
And it would just go through, and everybody try to catch a look.
I actually, and again, just a little side comment here, but I had Neil Tyson DeGrassi, the astrophysicist, in the building, and it was like all of the tech guys were like
heads were exploding.
It was like screaming girls at a Beatles concert. You know what I mean?
That's funny.
It was fantastic. Anyway, so the music came together because it's a brilliant soundtrack.
So Phil came to the studio at one point, and we pitched him the entire movie, all of our visuals. We had already I love musicals, and we had already spotted where we thought the songs would go. Yeah. So we were pitching those moments to Phil, and he actually on the lunch break went away, and on a little scrap of napkin started writing "You'll Be in My Heart." So it was immediately. So we came back from lunch, and he started tapping. Remember, we had all those blue rails.
Yeah.
He started tapping on those blue rails, and he started to sing like na 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 na, "You'll be in my heart." And he had like this general sense of what he wanted to do with it, and we just said, "Oh, he's one of us."
Wow.
You hear an idea, and you draw a picture.
Yeah.
He hears an idea and he writes a song.
There you go.
Writes a line of music, right?
Yeah.
So it was really great from the very beginning. He was hugely collaborative. We struggled. The song we struggled the most with was "Trashing the Camp."
Really? I'm surprised by that. I'm actually surprised.
Because it was built piece by piece, sound by sound.
Yeah.
So first we made a list of all the things that could be played in the camp. We sent it to him. He started playing around with building rhythms. He sent it to us. We did a little bit of storyboarding. We said, we think it needs to get bigger here. We'd send it back to him. He'd write some more things, and he'd try out some new ideas. Yeah. So that song went back and forth. It never landed in our lap as like, here's the song, storyboard it.
Wow.
So that went back and forth. And then probably the last song that happened for us was Two Worlds, One Family, the opening.
Yeah.
Because it took us time to find, what is how to impart the thematic of the movie. What is the overriding theme of the movie, and how can we say it at the very beginning of our film?
And that was the heart of the film.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Right. It tells the audience, this is the journey you're going to go on. It is the story of.
Yeah. We're starting to bump against time, but I did want to wrap this segment up by asking how you felt the movie was received when it released, and what accolades came along with it.
Oh, it was so embraced. I think we had a couple of movies that hadn't performed as well.
Yeah.
And this movie came out, and suddenly we were back to where we were. In looking back at it, it's considered the last film of the Disney Renaissance. it sort of bookends
it really does, you know.
Yeah.
And beautifully so.
Yeah, and the reviews were great, and it went through awards season. Phil won the Academy Award for "You'll Be in My Heart."
Yeah.
It just went on and did incredibly well. Mark Mancina, who wrote the score along with Phil, got a BMI, Film and TV Award. It just kind of kept.
Kept rolling for a year.
Yeah, got a Grammy Award for best soundtrack. It just did really, really well, and it was totally embraced by the audience. So it was a rewarding experience. It wasn't easy.
None of these films are easy.
Talking about it from where we're at, it all seems like we can look back at it and with glowing accolades, but it was never easy, and we hit some moments that were incredibly difficult.
Sure.
To get through, and I had I even had some personal run-ins on the film because I'm a director that has a point of view and holds on to that point of view, and sometimes that can rub up against collaborators who are used to grabbing hold and doing it their way.
Yeah.
It can rub up against them, and I actually had some head-to-heads at times. But always I was trying to put the movie first. It wasn't about my ego. I always felt like it was what was best for the movie.
Sure.
And I check in with Chris Buck and Bonnie Arnold. My producer was great. She was always a great ear. She always made us go out and take care of it ourselves. She was like the mom who said, okay, you go take care of this. This is what I think, this is what you're dealing with. This is how I think you should deal with it. Great advice, but she pushed us to go out and do it ourselves, which was kind of good because it gave me a confidence. I couldn't hide behind my producer and have them take care of all the woes.
Yeah.
But it was tough at times.
Yeah. So once the movie came out and was a success, did you look like, say, well, okay, what's my next animated feature? Or were you sort of in a place of, I've been there, done that, and I want to do something different?
Well, we talked about this in one of the other episodes.
Yeah, yes.
Right? And I have this wandering soul kind of feeling to me. And I had, I had done puppets and directed puppets, and I had directed some stage pieces. And I remember when Goofy Movie came out, I was approached by an agent who said, have you ever thought about doing live action? Yeah. So it started like this little noodle at the back of my brain. And when Tarzan was done, I went to Peter and I said, I'm going to go try to make a live action movie. And he said, okay, great. I wish you the best of luck.
And I think this is a perfect place for us to end this segment, because when we come back next week, I want to talk a little bit about that process of moving, that transition, if you will, to get into live action. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for being here this week on the Skull Rock Podcast, Kevin, and we'll see you next week to delve into your foray into live action.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Skull Rock Podcast is on Patreon. You can help support the show with your monthly contribution and become a friend of the show. Be part of the almighty Skull Rock Podcast crew. Much like friend of the show, Josh Volker. Or you become a producer, an awesome crew member, Steve Munch. Also, Chris Bannis. Thank you so much. By supporting the show, you get to make sure that A, you get a shout out on the show, and B, support the show and get this content for free every single week. Now, I tell you, one of the coolest things about being a Patreon crew member is the fact that you get to have ad-free versions of this show. So if you do dig it and you want it, you might even put in some extra, like, behind-the-scenes stuff. We're working on that. So if you enjoy the show, awesome. Be part of the show, be part of the Patreon, and keep this show going. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support and subscribing to Skull Rock Podcast.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kyle Maynard. I am a author of the book No Excuses, a 2-time ESPY Award winner, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro born without arms and legs, bear crawled up the mountains. And I'm stoked to be here listening to Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast, where you hear the stories behind the adventures.
Let's get out of here!
Come on, Scotty, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here, Lieutenant.
All right, Dave, you got to love Kevin. Man, so many great stories. It's amazing that we have him here for this entire month.
Look, I think this is fantastic. I think this is a really great interview with Kevin. We've got 6 parts that we're covering, and we really go in depth into his career, how he got into to direct some of these films, and in the upcoming episodes, some of the behind the scenes of being in the industry. Yeah. So some really great stories, though, and I hope our listeners are enjoying this. So continue next week. This week is part 3. Next week we're dropping part 4.
I love being part of these shows. It's great when you have these talents aboard that are sharing their stories, if you will. And man, I'm just so happy to be part of it and hearing it.
And something, Aljon, I normally don't tip our hand with guests, and I'm not going to, only to say that we have shows in the can right now. We have shows that go out to February of 2026.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's crazy. And, we've got some big interviews coming up, like we have with Kevin. We've got some smaller ones that we're mixing in where, it's just a one-off or a couple of weeks. But really some great stuff coming up for the rest of this year and into the new year.
It's wonderful, Dave. I'm just a fly on the wall. I just love hearing these things. I'm a fan, and I learn something new every single week, and it's so much fun. Well, gang, thank you for tuning in and listening to the very end. We do appreciate that. Don't forget, as we said at the beginning of the show, love us and like us on social. We're there, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Instagram. We're there. You can also email us, Dave or Aljon, at skullrockpodcast.com. We'd appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Every little bit helps. Give us a like every time we release new content. Those podcasts are put up there, and we would certainly love your feedback on those as well. You can also find me on my other podcast, Dining at Disney. We have new shows released every single week. We were breaking down some of the new stuff that's going on at the Walt Disney World Resort in terms of Food and Wine Festival news, all kinds of great stuff there. And you can actually follow me on Instagram. I'd appreciate it. Aljon Go on Instagram, Aljon Rocks on X. That's the best way to keep up with me. Dave?
Well, as always, you can listen to my Tunes Behind the Tunes show on SiriusXM Disney Hits, channel 133. All during July, we are featuring the song Baby Mine from Disney's 1941 animated classic Dumbo.
My favorite.
So check that out. If you want any copies of my books, like The House of the Future or Claude Coates' Walt Disney's Imagineer, The Building of Disneyland, Kem Weber, Find Your Happy Place, any of my books, you can get autographed copies at theoldmillpress.com. And of course, you can always check out my website, davidbossert.com. There's links to all my books. There's free content, and there's free stuff that you can send away for. So check it out. And with that, Aljon, I would say go out and have a fantastic week. As always, be kind to one another, and we'll see you back here next Monday, right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.
Kristen, what's our travel tip for this week?
Right now, you can save up to 30% on rooms at select Disney Resort Collection hotels when you stay 5 nights or longer. So this is going to be for the following dates to save the up to 30%. August 1st to the 11th, August 24th through September 14th, September 28th through October 11th. It's up to 25 if you are staying August 12th through the 23rd and September 15th through the 27th. The percentage drops by 5% if you choose to stay less than 5 nights.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in this particular travel deal, or if you just want to hang out at Disneyland, Universal, any cruise line, including Disney, of course, and you can look at Royal Caribbean and
MSC.
There's so many different cruise lines, or
Viking.
even yes, that's right, River Cruises, Adventures by Disney. How can you save time and money and have them book their vacation with you, Kristen?
They can contact me at Kristen@magicaljourneystravel.com. Again, that's Kristen, Kristen, at magicaljourneystravel.com.